Um, how's it going, everybody? I would love to do a demo for you of Qri 040. Basically the same demo we did at School of Data, which was this last Saturday. Awesome event. I'll kind of speed it up a little bit because you're probably familiar with this project, but basically Qri's conceptual model. So we're, as you know, version control system, peer-to-peer network, and a database. So we're kind of somewhere in the middle of all these three things to give you more flexibility with not only munging and working with data, but sharing it, and basically turning from federated data sharing where, large resource entities publish and everybody else consumes, and it's not really a two-way street, into this sort of leveling action where publishing and consuming of data sets are equal. It's just as easy to share as it was to consume a data set. And then we like to cover this conceptual model, the data set model, before we go into the demo, just because it's important to understand when we say body, we're talking about a table of data. Meta and Readme are all things that are complementary to the body, but they all really live together under what you would think of as the same document model. So we're kind of adding to data and saying it's not just the data itself, but it's all the other things that you normally leave on the server when you download data, and they all get versioned together and they ride together. So without further ado, I'll fire up Qri Desktop 040. And while that's loading, I've already registered with an account here, so I can sign in and see a collection view that has no data sets in it. So what we're going to do today is actually create a new data set using this button. Actually, we might not use the button. We may drag and drop it. But generally speaking, if you want to create a new query data set, you will start with an existing file-based data, which would be a CSV. And to do that, I'm going to actually go to the New York City Open Data Portal and download this very simple and very small CSV of business improvement districts. These are basically like local government entities that work with businesses in an area, and they'll do street infrastructure improvements, and they'll do they'll manage some of the public space in a retail corridor. So if I export a CSV of this from the New York City Open Data Portal, I end up with this file called Directory of Business Improvement Districts. I'm gonna throw that on my desktop with big fat icons so everyone can see them. And let's go back to Qri Desktop. And so in this collection view, which is basically a view of all the data sets I have locally, which again, I have none, I can drag and drop a CSV. So there's my drop zone. And as soon as I let go, it's going to import and infer column types from the CSV. And you can see it dropped us right into a data set view. So before I explore dataset view, I can go back to collection view, and you'll see that there's indeed one dataset now in my collection here. It's called SOD_demo2, which is my username for this demo, and then directory of business improvement, which is basically inferred from the file name. So I can change that later. But back here in dataset view is where we can actually start crafting this dataset. And it's important to understand the context here of history. Basically, we have one version now of this dataset. Qri has inferred the column types, and it has made a commit on our behalf, and then the commit message for that commit is created dataset. So we can explore what happened in this commit, because the UI here is actually telling us which components were created during this action. So we have a body component that is green with a green light here, so that means it was added during that commit. And we also have a structure component that was added during that commit. So I can explore the table here and just look at the values that are in it. I can also take a look at structure and see how it came up with, it read the header row, it's now come up with column names and inferred their types. So we've got integers and strings in this data set. So that's all well and good, and now we have a canonical version with a hash for when this data set was just dragged in. So this is effectively the Qri's view of this data set as it was downloaded from the Open Data Portal. But now we want to start adding value and doing things that you can only do in Qri. So let's click on status over here, and we can now actually start adding new components that don't already exist. So the first thing we can do is add a README, and this supports Markdown, so it's similar if you've ever worked with GitHub. I can call this Directory Business Improvement Districts, and just leave sort of freeform text to help people understand why I care about this data set, I downloaded this and want to add some additional columns to it, for example, to complement the data set that was published by the government. So I could add that README, and you can see as I'm typing here, the UI lights up. So effectively what it's saying is I've now staged a change that could be committed and that would add a README component. So the README would be new, and that's why it's showing up as green. We can also do some metadata. So this is not freeform. This is much more structured. And this would, basically is using DCAT, so it can show up in data catalogs and show up in Google's dataset search and things like that. So let's click on the title and let's do directory of business improvement districts. And then for a description, I can actually just go copy it right from the Open Data portal. I could add to it if I want to, but let's just get something in there that actually means something so I don't have to try and come up with something meaningful right here in demo mode. I can also add keywords like urban planning, like streetscape. Whoops, that's not a keyword. Let's do streetscape. Let's do NYC. So I can start adding my own keywords. So I mean, this is it. You're basically, you're now looking at a view that, the ability to add metadata that talks about a data set has been the gate-kept realm of the people who maintain open data portals, and we've sort of democratized that. And now, you can actually add these to your own data sets and publish them with the same ease. So you can see now we've got README and Meta are now new components, and the commit tab has lit up down here. So if I click on commit, I can now add a commit message here and just say added basic metadata and a README, and I can commit that. And it'll drop us back into history, and now good commits. So we've got the initial commit when we loaded the data set, and we've got one commit with a nice message here that says where we added metadata. And as we explore this view down here of the data set, we can see what it looked like during this commit. So README and Meta were new, and if I click on the original one, the instructor were new. So the next thing I can do is edit the schema. So if I click here on structure, I could change the name of a column, or I can add a description to that column. So if I click on my body here and I see organization name, so org underscore name is the name of the column, but let's add a better description for that column and say the legal name of the bid. And you can see, same thing. As soon as I start making changes, the UI is letting me know that I'm ready to commit because there's actually a difference now. So I could add another one here for, whoops, I used the wrong field. So this will just be a unique ID assigned by, and I'm not sure who assigns that. So I'm going to leave it blank, and we're not going to publish this. Or if we do publish it, we'll take it back down immediately because I don't want to share bad data with the world. So I'm going to commit this, and I'll do one more commit here and just add another message that says added some column descriptions. I'm crafting this data set and making changes as I go, and I'm leaving a little breadcrumb trail for anyone who wants to follow along and see what changes I've made. And now I've got 3 commits. So you can see the process we're going through here. And last but not least, I want to do a body edit. So if I click on body, we can see the body table here. We're very close to being able to just click on here and start editing and start typing, but we can't do that just yet. So what I can do actually is just drag in a new version of the same CSV, and it'll basically stage that as a change to the body. So here's my original CSV. I'm going to open it with a tool called Table Tool, which is just a Mac CSV viewer or / editor. And what caught my eye about this data set was this column called org year, which you can see here. You can see here is some of an actual year, and some of them have a month plus a year. So I'm going to simulate cleaning up this data set and saying, nope, I don't care about the month. I should store it in another column, but I know people can put the original if they want to, but I'm just going to turn this into a year column because it suits my purposes better. You could argue that I'm removing value from this data set. I guess it depends on your point of view. So pretend I'm editing all of these. I'm just going to do 5 for now. And I'm going to save this CSV. So this is saved on my desktop still, but what I can do is drag this right into Qri on top of the body. So it's basically read my new CSV or my newly saved CSV, and it's comparing it to the previous commit body. And then if I commit, I will just say cleaned up some values in the org year column, and we'll hit commit. Okay, so we've gone from, now we got 5 commits. Sorry, we have 4 commits now. And this last commit, we see a body change. So we didn't add a new component here. We actually modified an existing component, so it's showing up as orange instead of green. But that's basically our full process here, and we can see if we inspect the body here that my org years are actually just years, which is what I edited. So now they're in Qri. And last but not least, we want to actually I'm going to change the name of this data set right now. So it just says Directory of Business Improvement. I'm going to call it Business Improvement Districts. So it's the full word. So all I have to do is click on that to change it, and it renamed the data set. And then last but not least, we have this publish button. So what this button does is it's going to take my entire, it's going to take my full data set with all of my commit history, push it up to Qri Cloud, and then you'll be able to, with one click, clone this entire history of events down to your local machine and inspect it. So let's hit publish. It's giving me a warning that this will be public on the internet. And just like that.
Drum roll. Yeah.
All right, so that publish button turned into a view in cloud button. If I click that, you can see we've got a nice URL structure up here, qri.cloud/my username/ the dataset name, and we can see the meta. We can see the body preview and take a look at the dataset and decide whether we want to use it. But I can now copy and paste this link and fire it off to a friend. The other thing that we are able to do is if you click on my username here, this is basically my personal open data portal. So now I can share this, and this is discoverable, and anyone who is interested in what I'm working on can come to my Qri Cloud profile and see the stuff that I have most recently committed and pushed, which is probably topical and relevant, and is what I'm jamming on these days as a data person. So that's our Qri demo. I can turn it back over to the group for questions, or I can show anything else that anybody wants to see. We can also do diff. Do you want to do diff?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so while I still have the reins. So we have this little compare view tab over here. And this is still pretty nascent, but right now, in the future, you'll be able to choose, 2 bodies from different data sets that you have. In Qri right now, it only works with CSVs, but it's more of a demonstration to show that the differ is working, and we can visually show you a diff between 2 data sets. So you saw that I made a change to the CSV. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to download the original one from the Open Data Portal of New York City again, and then we're going to compare the version that's on my desktop with the version that we just downloaded. And you should be able to see those value changes where I was removing months from the columns or from the organization year. So let's click on this before view. Let's go to downloads. Let's go to downloads, and let's find Directory of Business Improvement Districts. If I can click on it, there it goes. Okay, and then what I want to compare it to is the changed version that's on my desktop. Let's go to Chris Whong desktop, and here's my changed view. And just like that, you can see it says +5, -5. So there's 5 changes here. If we scroll over, here's the diff, right? So I can actually see individual records that have changed here and what the previous value was. So this was January 2019, and it's now 2019, and so on. And we're visually showing you that the diff has changed. If I click on collapse, it's only showing me the new version, but it's highlighting those that were changed. And if I click on the little red hash here, I can actually see what the detail of that change was. So I can collapse, or I can do all changes, but that's it. And Brennan is cheering. So this is what we've been working towards for a very long time, and it's here and it's real. And the next iteration, we're wiring it up to the sets that we have in your Qri query collection.